and welcome to Friday night at the Clinton School. When Dottie Oliver emailed, no, not Dottie, I'm not going to be nice. When Dottie contacted me about this program, she said, we're bringing John Sinclair to Little Rock, and it would be a great program for you at the Clinton School. And then she asked me if I knew who John Sinclair was. And I said, listen, we have screened the documentary here, U.S. versus John Lennon. And if you've seen the documentary, then of course you know who John Sinclair is. So I said, you bet. So we are glad. And look at this crowd on a Friday night. How many of you are going to Whitewater? That's good. Could I please ask that you turn your cell phones and other electronic devices off? And I will say, because of the large crowd, it's a little crowded. So at the conclusion of our program, we're going to have some question and answers, but please bear with us as we get the microphones to you, so that when it's recorded for our website, that the viewers can hear the questions. So if you'll bear with us, it'll take a little logistics. Also, at the conclusion, we're going to have a book signing, and I encourage you, a rare treat, to purchase It's All Good and to have it signed tonight. This is a very special treat, and we're thrilled that John's going to be doing that. So I want to thank our volunteers, and I want to thank Nicolai Pippa, our Deputy Director of Public Programs, who coordinates this great series. You have on your chair the upcoming programs at the Clinton School. Let me highlight one on February the 24th. It's currently #1 on the New York Times bestseller list by John Heilemann and Mark Halperin. Probably the best political book, certainly the most political book with the most buzz of the year. Game Change, about the 2008 elections. It's #1 on the Times bestseller list, and John and Mark will be here to sign that book. And it's a rare treat. We've had a lot of speakers. We've never had someone with their book #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, so we're honored to have them. So you can take a look at those programs. To introduce our speaker today is Clinton School student Judy Watts. Judy is a native of Longview, Texas. She's a graduate of the University of Texas with a degree in radio and television. Her volunteer experience includes teaching English as a second language. At the Clinton School, she's working with the Arkansas Community Foundation, working with ACF to strengthen its local affiliates throughout the states. So would you please welcome Clinton School student Judy Watts.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Dean. The poet Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Music takes us out of the actual and whispers to us dim secrets that startle our wonder as to who we are and for what, whence, and where to." Tonight's program, North Mississippi Blues, Reflections from the Hill Country, is all about the whispers, wonders, and even the actual, as told through blues musicians from Mississippi and the Delta. Blues music was born as a means of self-expression and communication, documenting the ills of society. As many of you know, the Mississippi Delta is widely regarded as the birthplace for blues due to its history of slavery, oppression, and illiteracy. At the Clinton School of Public Service, we learn about all the typical leaders in the public service sector. We also learn that public service is not limited to holding public office, volunteering, or even solving problems for those in need, but that everyone has a story, and often it's these unheard stories from the fringes of our community which need to be heard by everyone. Shining a light on these dim secrets opens possibilities for creating a new future. Nothing embodies this more than the lyrics and stories as told through the blues. That's why it is with great pleasure and honor that I'm introducing our guests tonight. We've got a great program. With us today is John Sinclair, activist, musician, and poet, who will be part of our panel. John Sinclair used music as a springboard for civil rights while managing the band MC5. Mr. Sinclair is in fact the first speaker at the Clinton School to have a song written for him by Beatles member John Lennon. And no, I am not referring to Strawberry Fields Forever or I Am the Walrus. Also on our panel tonight is David Kimbrough Jr. Musician David Kimbrough Jr. used music as an avenue for sharing his own story about his time spent in Parchman State Farm Penitentiary. His album is called Shell Shocked. Moderating our panel tonight is Arkansas Times journalist and fellow music lover J.T. Tarpley. Please give a round of applause for our special guests, John Sinclair, David Kimbrough Jr., and J.T. Tarpley. Thank you.
Thank y'all for coming. This is a packed house. Guys, this is an absolute pleasure to have John Sinclair and sorry guys, Walter here tonight. This is absolutely fantastic. I'm not gonna feign to act like I know much about the blues. The more that I think I know, the less it turns out that I know. So this is gonna be really easy, really informal. Hopefully we can open this up to a Q&A really soon, because I know every blues nerd out here worth their weight in 78s has come, and they have a lot more interesting questions to ask than I do. So sure, let's hand it off. Go ahead and start rapping at him, man.
Hello. How y'all doing? Well, I'm the son of the late, great Junior Kimbrough. How many of y'all familiar with him? My name is David Kimbrough Jr., and yes, any question that y'all want to ask tonight, feel free, because I'm here to answer, okay? And that's my introduction for right now. Plenty more to come a little later, okay? All right.
Wow, I see a lot of blues lovers out here tonight. It's a great pleasure for me to be here in Little Rock, the home of my very dear friend and mentor, Mr. Robert Palmer, now in heaven. I've been a blues lover since I was a little boy outside of Flint, Michigan, a little country town, listening to WLAC radio out of Nashville, Tennessee. And they would beam the blues on 50,000 watts of clear channel power all over the middle of the United States. And little guys like me cowering under the covers at night listening to Howling Wolf and Sonny Boy Williamson and not having any idea what they were talking about. But it was the best thing you'd ever heard in your life. So from that start of just sharing records over the radio, I started trying to figure out, where did these records come from? Who were these people that were making these records? And how did they learn how to play such incredibly great music? So that's occupied the last 50 or 60 years. Well, maybe I was 12 when that started. And it was when my friend Robert Palmer moved to New Orleans. I had moved to New Orleans from Detroit in the early 90s, and Bob moved to New Orleans. And I'd been a huge fan of his, and I, in fact, had looted his writings for many portions of my blues poems. I have an elongated work in verse focused on the Mississippi Delta called Fattening Frogs for Snakes. And so when I finally met Bob in New Orleans, I don't know if I should say this, but he called me. My phone rang one day, and the guy says, "This is Bob Palmer." He says, "Gloria Powers told me you might be able to get me some weed." So he lived about 2-3 blocks away from me. And one time he called, said, "Come on over," and he had some tapes that he'd made up by Holly Springs, Mississippi, from a guy named Junior Kimbrough.
That's a blessing.
Yes, that's what I thought. And he played me this and explained about the sessions and how elemental and basic it was, and the sounds that you heard in the backgrounds were the sounds of the wood and the wind and the walls and all that. So I got a chance to hear this in the most optimal of conditions. And then, of course, he came back with the R.L. Burnside album, both of those for Fat Possum, based over in Oxford, outside of Oxford. And I'm a person who is very familiar and conversant with the Delta blues. That's been my focus in blues, and especially the modern, the electric Delta blues. That's what I grew up on. But when I heard this hill country music, it was as powerful, it was as soulful, it was as musical, but it had a different focus, and it had a hypnotic element that was just compelling. What they call the joy of repetition, delight in repetition, of repeating and repeating until the musician and the audience perhaps can gain a trance-like state where they transcend their individual egoisms and become a small seed in the vast universe of humanity and the stars and what have you, you know. That's the trance thing, and it goes back a long ways. Anyway, I was fascinated with this music, and I started playing it on my radio show and listening to it and studying, and then looking into the background of it. And at one point, I don't know how many, not very many years ago for me, several, I was assigned by my pal Tom Speed in Oxford. He had a magazine called Honest Tune, very good magazine. And he gave me assignment to write a piece about the North Mississippi hill country blues. And then I had the chance to do a little research and talk to a lot of people and read a lot of stuff on it. I say that because I'm kind of hawking my new book called It's All Good. And that piece I took care to place in this collection, which is a collection of stuff about all kinds of different things. A lot of blues stuff in there. I had a beautiful interview with Walter Wolfman Washington, who I just saw Wednesday night in New Orleans. That's in there. Irma Thomas, people like that. The North Mississippi Hill Country Blues. Dave, as a practitioner, but you didn't come to this from any philosophical or academic. I mean, you got this over the breakfast table.
Yeah, I did. Actually, sitting right under my dad's, while he lay in the bed under his feet, you would sing. And I wouldn't go to bed until he played me a song. And so I think fluently I just received and inherited everything that he had to offer musically. I am my daddy. I am Junior Kimbrough Jr. That's my dad. And I got one other daddy, and his name is R.L. Burnside. Y'all know R.L. Burnside? Yeah. Those are the only two fathers I had in the blues. And I actually left home at a young age, 15, went to Chicago and got off into an R&B band and started singing Prince, and I liked that stuff when I was young, And my dad, he wasn't upset at me or anything, but when I made my appearance, back home, he wanted me to play with him, play along with him, and I kind of got in there and I got riled. I had a rough life as a child, coming up my adolescent days, and Of course, as he said, him and Mr. Bob did. Bob, he come and recorded my record as well. I got the dog in me, Mr. Palmer, and I was incarcerated at the time that they did it. I was, you know, it come down to the penitentiary like they was the president or somebody, you know. I'm like, they were like, wow. I mean, I got a little, you know, time here, and I'm like, ain't no way I'm gonna get out of here. And he said, we're gonna have you out in 1 week or 2 days or 1 week. I said, no way. I got 5 years, you know, for being bad, you know. And I got to pay society back for my wrongdoings, you know. And so they come in and, you know, down there you got to be careful now. It's a little deal where you can't be dealing with the police because they'll call you a snitch, you know. Y'all know what a snitch is, right? And so the guys will beat you pretty bad in there if they think you're snitching or something of that nature. So I was scared that the big man come to me, he walking. Can I demonstrate how he was walking? He was walking like this. I said, no way. I said, what is it? He said, you need to come go with us. I said, I can't. He said, you're gonna have to. And I mean, they didn't come in the regular, you know, transit vans where they take you to the doctor or bus or whatever. They came in the big, you know, the big stuff. People know that ain't right. You gotta be snitching or doing something. I said, I can't. They said, well, you're gonna have to. He said, because if I recall correctly, the way he said it was, David, if you go with me today, I can send you home within 24 to 48 hours. I said, okay, here I come. I said, make sure I don't come back here, you know. But anyway, the guys, they gave him authorization to come to the camp where I was located and where I reside, and to come in with a recorder and record me singing and stuff. And I still didn't know what was going on, you know. And he said, he got me in the office, he said, David, big old dude. He said that. I said, yes, sir. You got to be polite, you know. It's, you know, yeah, it's scary when you have to be that polite, you know. But you got to stay in command. It's almost as, you know, something of the Navy. You just got to be polite, you know. Of course, I learned a lot. I'm 45 years old. Y'all give me a hand for living this long because I could have been gone, you know. And so I said, yes, sir. He said, who do you think you are? And I'm shaking up like, sir, who you think? You think you Bon Jovi? But anyway, I said no. He said, well, anyway, I want to tell you that it's a record company here by the name of Fat Possum. Have an icon, you know, with him. His name is Robert Palmer. They want to record a record on you and want to take you home. And he said, I'm going to tell you this. If you leave here this time, he said, don't come back no more because you won't get another record deal. So I said, okay, fine. I said, thank you. And I come home. They come in and recorded the CD there. And it wasn't actually what, you know, was happening out here during the time. So once I got here and got with my band, they cut that out and put my band on the CD. So it was good, and that was a blessing. I thank God that I'm here to be able to be here with y'all in living colors, okay? All right.
Was that your first experience with Robert Palmer, or?
Yes, it was.
Well, John, what was your first experience with Little Rock's favorite son?
Well, just like I say, when he called me that day. But I mean, I said, yes, of course. Who do you think you're talking to?
Well, I'll tell you what. There we go. Walter, tell me about growing up in your dad's legendary juke joint.
Palmer, though, Walter.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay. Y'all forgive him now. He's good. Okay, now go right here. Okay.
So, tell me about growing up in the juke joint.
Oh,
Well, some would say that's not a place for a child, but it seems like you turned out pretty awesome.
God. Well, whoa, in the end, I guess I did. But actually, starting out, my experiences was not actually in a juke joint. It was like a house.
Diversity in art. I don't know. There's something good about that.
Anybody else?
We'll bring you a mic. In listening to these bands and observing them, I have a question about the fifes. And that is, I see people doing that with two different flutes and talking about tradition and adhering to African music. I'm wondering if they don't use two different pentatonic scales on those flutes, like a minor pentatonic and a major pentatonic, both of which, of course, are found in African music. And I'm wondering if those flute players in those bands don't use those two distinctive flutes to play those two different scales. Do you have any idea?
I'm not a musicologist.
Well,
No, I know what you're talking about, but I don't really have the expertise to talk about that.
Well, basically, to be, totally honest about it, I don't think none of us know what we're doing. We're just playing it, to be totally honest. But I'm thinking right now, though, Papa Otha, after his going home to relax with the Lord, his granddaughter, Sade, she came along, and now she continuing. She liked the legacy of him playing that flute. And so I'm thinking she got some type of theory on her belt, and whatever that is, I don't know, because I never had a chance to do it. But that's basically, what's going on. But I think she got something going on theoretically, as far as me differentiating, the scales and tonics and stuff, I won't be able to do it.
Well, the flute, you got to cut it to play those two scales.
Okay, all right.
So it's not like playing the guitar, you play both of them on the guitar.
That's right.
Well, they cut it how you want.
They cut those fifes too. They make them themselves. I know that's part of it. Or I heard Other called a fice.
Just real short, could you, either of you, know why the hill country music of North Mississippi, which is distinctive from Delta blues, but why did it take so long? Why did it take Fat Possum Records to finally bring it to this country? I mean, so that you could hear it in Little Rock and San Diego.
That's a good question. No, it is. It's an excellent question. I never did understand that. Before that, Mississippi Fred McDowell was a practitioner in the same musical tradition, and he didn't really have much of a commercial impact.
One of Arkansas's own, Sidney Williams,
Yeah. Yeah, I heard Bonnie Raitt do them in '72 when she was about 18. She did a medley. She loved Mississippi when he was still alive. So. But he didn't have much, you didn't know very much. You had to really be a blues fiend to know about Mississippi Fred McDowell before he died. I never did get that. And Booker White before that was the leading known practitioner, and he was on our Hooli. So that means you sell about 500 albums,
All right. One more, yes.
I have a question for David Kimbrough. Can I ask you about the movie Big Bad Love, based on Larry Brown's book? Part of it, or it was partially filmed in Holly Springs. Did you have any experiences associated with that? Because I think there's a R.L. Burnside song on the soundtrack.
If I recall correctly, during that time I was incarcerated, and I'm thinking, but to be totally honest with you, I did receive some information, and the information that I did receive was that R.L. Burnside actually was in that movie, present in that movie physically. So that's about as much as I know about it right there. Actually, I hadn't even saw the movie yet. I haven't even seen it, but I know he in the movie personally himself singing.
All right, Matt right there. This is Matt White. He's the proprietor of Whitewater Tavern, which you guys should all come to tonight.
Hey, man.
How you doing, sir? It's such an honor to have you guys here. We really, really appreciate it. David, I was curious, what was it like for your father and RL when they finally did start beginning to be recognized on a national level, and what was the effect on them, and what was their time like when all that began to happen?
You know, briefly, to kind of just tie up, you know, the, let's say the start of everything, it stemmed from, it was this guy, I'm going to say this to come back to answer your question. It was a guy, his name was Rockabilly Charlie Feather. Y'all ever heard of Charlie Feather? Give him a round of applause. He was brilliant too. Charlie was brilliant. Anyway, I knew him personally. He used to sit on the porch with my dad. You know, he couldn't play nothing. I would say, I used to say, I'm about this tall. I said, Dad, what you doing with him, that white man on that porch? He can't play. He said, boy, get in that house, you know. But anyway, Charlie turned out to be a brilliant player, you know. And basically ended up doing some work with Elvis Presley. So in Elvis, he couldn't play no more than 2 or 3 chords himself, you know. And those 3 that he learned come from Charlie, and Charlie learned them from my father. So what, you know, a phenomenal deal. Sometimes I thank God that I'm 45 years old. I got a chance to see a little something, you know. But anyway, Charlie was a good fella, you know, and I never heard of R.L. Burnside during those days, you know. And that came along with the house parties and everything. But to make a long story short, my father had been knowing R.L. Burnside for years and years, but way before, you know, I even had knowledge of it. And it was just all of a sudden one day, we ended up at a club in Hollow Springs called Red Rafers. And it ended up later being my daddy's club called Junior's Juke Joint, you know, which became to be a famous club and everybody around the world had knowledge of. And so R.L. Burnside, I met him during this time, and at the same time when I met his son, little Duwayne Burnside. Y'all know Duwayne Burnside? Yeah, my little brother there. And it ended up from there, you know, right from that point where I started visualizing and not being so inconspicuous to the older guys, I started getting notability, and my brother as well, Duwayne Burnside. So from there, we all just locked in during those days, and we just came out. Ended up, Duwayne jumped over in my bloodline, and I jumped in his. So we are really in the, you know, in the family now. We got blood, you know. He got blood in my family. I got blood in fact, I got 8 daughters and 3 sons. And 2 of those daughters is R.L. Burnside granddaughters by his baby daughter, Pam Burnside. So this is how it all came about, you know, and it turned into one great story. So later on, be looking for a book that I got coming out called Kimbrough's Unfinished Business. Y'all gonna hear some stuff you ain't gonna believe, okay? Yeah.
First off, thanks. I'd like to thank y'all for being here. And it's the Clinton School of Public Service, a musician, a social activist. And you're talking about really American music here, and American music that really gets to the soul and can heal people. And what I wanted to ask is as a musician and an activist now, that our country needs healing probably more than it has since the 60s. What do you think music can do to pull us together again?
We can do the same as always. You just have to be able to hear it, that's all. Exactly. They've got it locked out now of America. Right. You let the same people own all the record companies, the television stations, the radio stations, and the movie studios, and so you're getting a little stream about this big, and they're hitting you with like a fire hose, and the people, that, you know, Americans, they don't know who Miles Davis was. You know, if you don't hear some music by Miles Davis, your life ain't gonna be right. You know? I mean, really, you know. Or Billie Holiday, or Muddy Waters, or Robert Johnson. I mean, You need this. We need, I'm a fairly healthy individual for, being an old beatnik poet, But I'd jump off the bridge if I couldn't listen to this music every day. And I don't know, I don't want to, blow my horn, but I've got an internet radio station called RadioFreeAmsterdam.com, and I'm constantly making 1-hour programs of American music of the kind we're talking about here today. And you can go there and they stay. It isn't like a radio. You don't have to tune in from 3 to 4. They're up there. So if you go to our site, you can hear some of these stations. I got some programs from Scott Beretta over in Oxford, and Tom Morgan and David Kunian in New Orleans. Anyway, I present these things. It doesn't cost anything. You can hear them for nothing. You just got to go to that website. But they aren't going to be on television. Nor am I.
All right, guys, I think we have time for one more. You, sir.
Hi, thanks, guys. I was wondering, there seems to be a lot of animosity towards the guys in Fat Possum Records. If you watch the documentaries, You Looking at Me, talk to a lot of guys in Clarksdale. Depending on who you talk to, you get a different version of the story, but from them stealing money from artists to them, I don't know, I've heard 101 stories. I wonder if you had any experience like this or knew anything?
Could you run that question one more time? You asking me this question?
Yes.
Okay, could you run it just one more time? I'm sitting here daydreaming, I'm listening, but okay.
I'm one of those damn foreigners. Yeah, from the documentary movie made by Fat Possum, You Looking at Me, featured all the Hill Country blues guys and the Fat Possum Records. On that documentary, and from talking to people around Clarksdale, there's a lot of animosity towards the guys who run the record company. They seem to think they're doing it for themselves, they're making all the money, they're kind of taking people like your father, RL, for a ride. They're kind of doing this for money, they couldn't give a stuff about the artists.
Maybe you should organize a symposium on Fat Possum Records.
I just wondered what you knew, what experience you had with the guys personally.
Okay, let me see. I'm gonna demonstrate. I like demonstrating, Let me stand up for a minute. Watch this. Let's see. Let me look at my pocket. Oh Lord. Well, I ain't got no money. To make a long story short, I'm sorry, I don't mean no harm. But no, actually, to answer your question is, to be totally honest, I can only speak right now for the Kimbrough family. I'm not too familiar with what's going on financially, with the Burnside family, but right now we're in process of making a change. We got some lawyers and stuff doing stuff, so that's as far as I can go on that question right now, okay? All right, but that's it, okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, did you like this program? And while we had two superstars on the stage, didn't John T. J.T. Tarpley do a good job moderating? So now you got to go to Whitewater. And we thank you all for coming. I'm going to ask John to move over here so that he can position himself to sign the book. And for those of you that haven't purchased the book, you can do so.